My name is Jason Salomi, and this is Perfection, an athlete's perspective. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Salomi, and welcome to another episode of Perfection, an athlete's perspective. Now, today, I have a very, very special guest, someone that I've actually looked forward to speaking to for a while now. He played for Bellingham RFC and Hartlepool Sixth Form College before moving on to the Newcastle Falcons and winning the Anglo-Welsh Cup Breakthrough Player Award in 2018. And he was also the top try scorer in the European Challenge Cup. His Premiership debut in 2018 was in 2018, and he won the Falcons Academy Player of the Season, and he scored his first Prem try in 2018-2019. And he's also one of the most exciting prospects for England in the past few years. Mr. Adam Radwan. Adam, how you doing, man?
I'm really good, thanks, Jason. How are you?
I'm really good, really good. I'm really happy to speak to you, and I've got quite a few questions for you today, man. So the reason I wanted you on here so much is because you're a young athlete, such as myself, and you're sort of on that brink, about to break out, and I've been watching a lot of your highlights recently. I saw a almost viral highlight that went round the other week of you and such an excellent try and excellent finish. So I want to speak to you about your finishing ability and your speed in particular, and also just that mindset that you're able to finish at such high efficiency, and also about your athleticism. Because I play American football, and while I don't play offense and touch the ball that much, there are times when I can get in the end zone and what have you. And there are also players that might be listening to this that play other sports that could definitely benefit from listening to you speak. Is that okay?
Yeah. It's sounds really exciting.
Thank you, man. Okay, so I just wanted to ask you from a background perspective, have you always been, really fast, or is it something that you've had to work on, while growing up, and have you played any other sports?
So when I was like a really young kid, like primary school age, I was really quick. Like I was always the fastest kid in my primary school, and like sports days and stuff, I always cleaned up.
Yeah,
Um, but then when I got a bit older and went to like secondary school, everyone had kind of caught up with me, and I was like quick, but I wasn't anyone. So like I played school football and school rugby,
hmm,
and I wouldn't have been anyone that would have like stood out for their speed. And then by the time I went to sixth form, I had an opportunity to go to a sixth form with a really good rugby academy and like
yeah,
really good strength and conditioning coaches. So I basically just worked with them a lot, and like loads of speed stuff, went in the gym loads, and then just kind of got quicker and quicker and quicker.
yeah,
And then when I got to Newcastle, still now like all my gym programs are built around like explosive speed and power,
hmm,
um, as well as like changing my technique a little bit. Because although I was really quick when I first came to Newcastle, my technique wasn't that good.
yeah,
So that they kind of helped me work on that a little bit. But most of it is like gym programs and speed sessions,
hmm.
to get me up to where I'm at the minute.
Brilliant, man. And you spoke about changing your technique. What sort of changes are we speaking about? Are we speaking about the way you run? Are we speaking about your breathing? What exactly did you change?
The way I ran, so like everyone, even now, I don't have great technique, but I've
Mm,
always had really, really quick leg speed. So it's about how can I change my technique without losing my leg speed. Um, but then at the same time, a lot of like we'd have like specialist speed coaches come into Newcastle quite a bit, and
yeah,
they obviously they wanted me to change it, but they were kind of a bit, not scared, but like hesitant to change too much because they didn't want to make me slower.
yeah,
Um, so it was just like little things about like getting my knees through because I ran with like really short steps and my leg speed was really fast, but I was taking tiny little strides,
yeah,
um, and not like bringing my knees through and stuff like that. So it was about just making tiny little adjustments that could make a big difference.
yeah. And so you talk about increasing your sort of stride length. Did you
Yeah,
do much? How did you train that? Was that a lot of mobility work or?
a lot of drills, so like a lot of bounds, a lot of like a lot of drills, and a lot of like looking back a lot of things. So like Kev, who's the head S&C at Newcastle,
Yeah.
I do loads of speed with him, and he videos it all.
Hmm.
So like we'll do a speed session, then we'll watch it back, and he'll be like, this rep was really good
Yeah.
because of this, and then he'll show me my technique and where what I can do and that. Like so, a lot of the stride length was on that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
And obviously your game is so built around speed, like you say, your programs are mostly built at speed in terms of strength and conditioning. How do you make sure that isn't your only asset? Because rugby is such a multifaceted game, and you play a position where you're gonna have to make a lot of open field tackles and stuff, and so it's not just
yeah.
speed, speed, speed. How do you make sure your game is complete?
Just you can't like you
Mm.
can't just like arrowhead to one thing. So although my speed is like my biggest strength and my biggest weapon,
Yeah.
it's you've got to work on everything else.
Hmm.
And obviously continue to working on your speed just because that's really good doesn't
Yeah.
mean you neglect that and forget about it. You keep working on that, but then at the same time you've got to make time for everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so one thing I want to speak to you about as well was your finishing. Now, I've noticed that, especially in rugby and American football, there are certain people who just know how to, in American football sense, get in the end zone, in rugby sense, get the ball down. And there's some people that really struggle with it. And it really does separate those elite players and those just good players. So I wanted to wonder, how did you work on your finishing? Is it something that has come natural to you, or is it something you had to continually push and push to get better at?
To be honest, it's come pretty natural. Like I remember,
Yeah.
as long as I've played rugby, I've always been pretty good at scoring tries.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, being quick and stuff helps, but it's just I've always somehow ended up to get over the line.
Yeah.
But you do work on it a lot. So like when you've got to work on like being tight to the touchline. So like when you're like diving into the corner to finish tries, you work on that quite a bit
Hmm.
because you might only get like one or two of them opportunities a season to finish.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that I thought was a big thing to work on because I'd never had one of them. Like I'd never. I remember I started working on it a lot last year or the year before, and then it was just happened like 3 weeks later. We were in a
Yeah.
semi-final, and I ended up scoring one of them tries. So like
Brilliant.
that's a big thing. Working on like how to score and um in them type positions.
Yeah. And is that something that is that stress to you a lot in training, sort of those little things that can get you those extra tries?
Yeah, and like something I'm not particularly good at, but there's like rugby players like Chris Ashton. He was really, really good at, which is it's something I want to work on. Is like looking for opportunities, like looking for people, like chasing people that they're going to make breaks, and if you can just get off their shoulder, it's like an easy try. So a
Yeah.
lot of it is like working out in your team, like who's likely to make a break, and like who's likely to create space for you, and then just kind of chasing them.
Hmm.
Um,
And is that
so he was
oh, go on.
he was really good at that, and it's something I wanna look to do.
Yeah, and is that looking at who you're playing as well? Like for example, you might have, I don't know, a center who you know just is just quicker than the other center. Is that knowing who you're playing, or is that just you might have someone on your team that you just know that he's gonna make a break eventually?
Yeah, so there's a bit of that. So you look, there's a lot of it as well. Is looking into who you're playing at the weekend and looking where their opportunities are.
Hmm.
So kind of watching the game, watching their previous games, and kind of see like where did they put their. So like typically front five forwards generally are a lot less mobile and a bit slower than everyone else. So kind of look where they get stuck and like how can you get yourself against them? Where's the
Hmm.
best place to put yourself against a guy who's not as quick or who has to defend a lot of space?
Yeah. And I guess you're someone like you trying to isolate yourself against someone like that because
Yeah,
that's an easy try or easy break. And the reason I want to speak to you about that is because I don't know if you watch much American football or you know much about it, but sometimes if you play offense, your quarterback, for example, or actually in my case, defense, I might look at matchups before a game. I might play in a team, and if the other team has a receiver, someone that catches the ball, who I know, for example, is a bit shy when it comes to contact, I'm gonna look to exploit that by creating as much physical contact as possible until he can prove to me that he isn't afraid of contact. And it's
Yeah,
that kind of just keep hammering at someone until they can prove to you that their weakness isn't actually a weakness, because for the vast majority of the time, their weakness is actually their weakness. And for example, in the case of a receiver, if he doesn't like being physical, oftentimes when he makes a catch, he's going to be looking around before the ball comes in, and that can lead to drops and such. So I guess we kind of have that crossover.
yeah, definitely. It's quite that aspect's pretty similar. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, because one thing I noticed as well, you talk about getting like big forwards into space. I was speaking to, I don't know if you know Antonio. He's a rugby player. He plays down in Cornwall, and he's a Exosuit as well. And he spoke about he's playing sevens. I know you play sevens too, and he talked about he got caught in the middle of the park and they scored three tries on him, and he said it was the most demoralizing thing he's ever been through. But he said that one thing that he noticed was that after the first try, they noticed that he was there and they kind of just trapped him. And
yeah,
rugby is like that. The hardest thing about rugby is you have to earn possession back. I think that's what makes it such a unique game. If you score, you're going to get the ball back, and it just, I've never. That's one thing I think people don't really understand. Rugby is really a game built on sort of respect and what have you, and the respect is if you score, you're going to get the ball back and you're going to get a chance to score again before the other team gets a chance to take the ball off you. And that's something that is just remarkable.
yeah. It's tough. It is tough like that.
And
Definitely.
yeah, no, I mean, how do you deal with that? Because I only played rugby a little bit at school and then a little bit of club rugby, but at the elite level, knowing that, let's say for example, you got a team and they're three tries up already inside 25 minutes, how do you deal with the fact that you have to try and get the ball back somehow?
Well, so thinking back to the start of this season, we were away at Bath and we went down. They scored pretty early, and we kind of weren't phased. So as a club, we're really resilient. We're,
Yeah.
so we, if they score in 2 minutes, that's fine. Like because if they can score in 2 minutes, we can score in 2 minutes.
Hmm.
But what we do at the minute is we've got a big Samoan guy called Logo, and whenever
Yeah.
we get like a little stoppage like that, if things aren't going the right way, he'll bring us all in and he'll take a few deep breaths. So we'll be like, we'll all have a few couple of deep breaths on him. The game leaders will speak to us and they'll put in valid points. Everyone will listen, and then we'll just go like, right, get to it, and we'll park what's happened and we'll just move on to the next thing,
That's brilliant.
which is pretty good. Yeah, that's really good. So everyone kind of has their little role in that. We'll have game leaders, attack leaders, defense leaders, big logs will get us in and get us focused. And when that's going on, like everyone's focused, everyone's zoned in, and then as soon as whatever's happened, we'll park it and we'll just get on to the next thing. Really.
That's really good. So, two things. Do you see yourself becoming one of those leaders that can sort of, if stuff's going wrong, can change a game?
Um, I like to think of myself as I'm the type of player that can create chances to win a game and to score
Yeah.
tries out of nothing. So that's kind of what I try and bring to the team is that I can do something and create something out of nothing, and
Hmm.
that's kind of what I want my point of difference to be.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
that's where I see my game going. Well, that's where I would like it to go.
oh, brilliant. And the breathing thing, is that something that you guys have spoke about in preseason, or did it just happen in game and you kind of just stuck with it?
It kind of just happened. It was our first game in the Prem this year, and yeah, logs. We were all chatting. We were having like a little meeting in the middle of the pitch. They've just conceded. We just conceded a try,
Hmm.
and everyone was don't panic, calm down. And big logs just went right. Everyone deep breath in, counted us in. We had a deep breath in, deep breath out. We're calm as you like, and then yeah, we ended up winning the game, which was it's a really tough place to go on the first game of the season to go away to Bath and win. So and
Yeah,
it's just
definitely.
carried on. It just carried on, and it worked really well for us because it gets you all focused. You look around the group and you forget about whatever's happened, and it works really well for us.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people have different coping mechanisms when things start to go wrong. I've heard a lot of athletes, like you say, they do the breathing. Some people use self-talk. That's something that I use. Um, Especially like, and it can be applied to any situation. If you're in a gym, for example, and you're training for a big PB or whatever, and you just have to get yourself in that kind of like flow mindset, that kind of zone where you know you're going to do it. Everyone kind of has their different process. So
Yeah.
you spoke about the breathing. Is that something that you've used outside of rugby as well?
Um, Sometimes, yeah. So like if I'm in the gym and obviously we're doing big lifts, you kind of psych yourself up with a couple deep breaths, a couple fast breaths, and then you just get into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably something I've used before without even thinking about it.
Definitely. All right, so I wanted to talk about your agility because it's one thing to be really fast in a straight line. Um, everyone can kind of get to that level where you're just fast and going, one direction. But it's another thing being really fast and going lateral, side to side, backwards, what have you. How do you train your agility? Because I've noticed that you have really good feet, and it's something that you can see in all of your tries.
Again, that's kind of something I've always had.
Mm,
Um, like I've always just been able to do that.
yeah.
But again, I still work on that quite a lot.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so like my kind of thing was, I think my thought process behind it was if you're playing against someone that's the like best defender or best tackler in the world, like he can't tackle you if you can't get close to you. So that was my thinking behind it. Like you could be like as well, you could be playing the opposite man could be one of the best tacklers around.
Hmm.
But if he can't get close to you, like if he's not quick enough or he's not agile enough, then it doesn't matter. Um, and
Absolutely.
that's not being like I'm not a massive person, so like that was going to be my way to get in the game and do well. And if you want to win collisions, a lot of the time you're not running in open space on the wing. A lot of the time it's like congested. So
Yeah.
that's another way of getting over the gain line is, if you run straight at a big bloke, he's just going to melt you. So it's like trying to get a
Yeah.
soft shoulder, try and run it like an arm rather than a body.
That's a really I never thought that's actually a really good cue because I guess if you're running at an arm they've got less chance to be able to stop your momentum. Whole body is better than an arm. And you're so you spoke about you it kind of just comes to you naturally. Did you ever find going from coming up through the ranks to playing obviously now Premiership rugby? Did you find it was harder to be agile, or did you find that you kind of just naturally adjusted?
And it was probably tough at first because a lot of the time I found myself I was trying to like overstep. So it's probably a bit of a confidence thing. When I first came to
Mm,
Newcastle, I was probably trying to like overstep people rather than like not because if I try to overstep, I'd lose a lot of my pace, I'd lose a lot of momentum, and then I'd just get tackled.
yeah.
Um, so it was a lot of it was that a bit of a confidence thing, and then realizing that you don't have to do that, you don't have to put as much footwork on, you can just use your speed or like vice versa.
Hmm.
But also one thing I did when I first came to Newcastle, I could only step off my left foot. And I remember I'd played all the preseason games for Newcastle. And then I got my first Prem start, and it was against Saracens at home.
Tough.
Um, and I was on a run, and I stepped off my left foot, and Brad Barrett just absolutely smoked me. And when I watched it back, you could see he was just like he'd obviously done his analysis. He knew I was going to step off my left foot, and he was just waiting for me. So that was kind of like a bit of an epiphany for me that I never worked on stepping off my right foot. It was always off my left.
Mm,
So that was another big thing. I just had to work, make sure that I could step off both feet, so the defenders didn't really know where I was going.
definitely, man. And I think as well, I think we can all relate to that when you get to a high level of sports, is people are watching you.
Yeah,
You might not think about it. You might think you're the best player in the world, but everyone if you're drawing attention to yourself, if everyone knows that Adam's the best winger in England, they're going to be watching you and trying to figure out what makes you the best winger in England. And like you say, Brad would have done his homework, and now
yeah,
that you're kind of on that radar of sort of the England setup, I guess everyone's going to have to be doing their homework because they know now that okay, this kid is actually really good, and we need to figure out how to stop him. I think as well, one thing that I've definitely become aware of too is just how important film study is. Do you spend a lot of time watching your opponent as well?
Yeah, I do. To be honest, I watch quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um, but it's not just like I said. It's not just like my opposite man. I look at you need to look at a lot of things. So like their kickers for like a winger, you need to cover the backfield as well. So you need to look at like who's a kicker for them and if they're right footed or left footed. Um, there's quite a lot to look at, and then you obviously look for where your opportunities are. So like I say, where you can isolate their slower players and their
hmm,
forwards.
yeah,
Um, that's kind of what I look at is obviously their kicking options,
hmm,
um, and then where I can get into the game as well
and
as the set piece stuff. And
yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of kicking options, do you because I know rugby sometimes you might get guys who kick it quite high or whatever, or quick or kick it quite steep. Is there any aspect of fielding kicks that you've struggled with that you've had to then work on and then adjust?
yeah, not being like the tallest bloke, it's a lot of it. You know, there's some massive wingers and there's some unbelievable kickers. So a lot of the kicks are contestable. So you've got to get off the floor, and it's just like a wrestle in the air. You've both got to get up and catch it.
Yeah.
Um, which is a pretty hard skill, especially at Newcastle where the wind is always blowing.
Hmm.
So that's something that's probably one of my definitely one of my weaker areas at the minute, but it's something I'm consciously working on because it's a massive part of the game. Like if you can kick the ball miles forward and send your winger up to catch it and win it back for you, you've just jumped 30 meters up the pitch in an instant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and then at the same time, it's also like a really good counter attack opportunity. So like if someone kicks a contestable kick to you and they've only got one guy chasing it, if you get up, beat him to it, then you've got a bit of space. And
Definitely.
it's a really good opportunity to counter attack.
And like you say, you're trying to be that guy on your team that can change momentum by yourself, and score pretty much any time you touch the ball. Um, and
Yeah.
I know you've not been in the Prem for too long, but I wanted to ask you, when did you realize that you could play at that level? Because I know for some players, you get to a higher level, and it could be the first game, might be the first hit, or first match or whatever. When did you realize that you're a Premiership player and that you can actually compete at a high level?
So I remember my first ever Prem game was I came off the bench at Worcester,
Yeah.
and it was like a really nice day. It was a scorching day, and I got subbed on. And I ran out, and as I was running to the wing, I was just looking around, and I knew that this is where I wanted to be.
Hmm.
I didn't think I wasn't thinking, oh, I definitely belong here. This is me, but I knew I wanted to do this every week. That it was something that I needed to do every week.
Yeah.
But it was probably, to be honest, it was probably my the game the of my second year at Newcastle. The last game of the season, we played Bristol at home,
Hmm.
um, and I was starting, and I just had like a really good game. Everything was kind of working for me.
Yeah.
Um, and against it's a team that was playing really well at the time and was full of world class players. I just had a really good game. And I just thought, yeah, like I'm definitely ready for this now. This is me.
Absolutely. No, and rightly you should, man. You had a terrific game. And in terms of going on to play for England, what do you think is going to take you to that level where you can be a future England starter?
Um, it's so competitive at that level, and it's so tight. So I think just being like super consistent with everything I do.
Hmm.
I obviously need to make a lot more improvements and stuff with my aerial stuff, but I think just being really consistent and um, being at the top of my game every week. I know you're gonna have days off and stuff, and you're not gonna have your best game every week, but I think just that's what it takes. I think to be at that level. I think if you look at the players that play for England when they're playing for their clubs, every week they're probably a standout player.
Hmm.
And like I say, it is so competitive at that level. So like that's why I want my speed, my agility, my ability to score tries to be my kind of point of difference.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna aim for.
No, that's really good because like you spoke about a few times, if if they can see, what obviously people that support you and your fans can see, that you're one of those players that is just a complete difference maker, somebody, a complete enigma, like somebody who can just score at any single point in the game. That's game changing. Obviously you've got the physical output and the speed, and like you say, it's just a matter of consistency. I personally think, having watched a few of your matches and stuff, I think you're up there in terms of pushing for that England spot, and hopefully one day starting. And obviously with your mindset and what we spoke about today, it seems like you're just about there. And I know I spoke about your finishing earlier. One thing I wanted to speak about, I spoke to a canoe slalom athlete, David Patterson, a couple of months ago now. He spoke about, in canoe slalom, you can have a perfect run where you're literally just in the zone. And if you do what you need to do, you know, you're basically guaranteed there's the fastest time on a certain track. When you're finishing tries, are you thinking about something? Are you thinking about, okay, I have to do this, that, and the other, or is it just you're just going through the motions and it's just you don't really remember it?
I'm just kind of going through the motions. A lot of the time when I make breaks and stuff, I know if I'm gonna like I know there's certain instances when I get the ball in a bit of space and I've just thought I know I'm gonna finish this.
Yeah.
But I don't think I make. I couldn't really tell you what I'm thinking. It kind of just happens, man.
Mm.
Yeah, my legs just do have a mind of their own, and I don't know what I'm thinking, but
No,
yeah,
no. Honestly, it's something that I think when you play sports at any sort of level, you kind of don't really especially when you do something like scoring a long try or a screamer of football, what have you. You don't really think about what you're doing. It just kind of happens. And I think like you say, because you're training so hard and you do what you need to do, your body, or I guess your subconscious, kind of just takes over, and you end up doing something that you might not even thought you could do. You might have just
yeah,
underestimated yourself.
definitely. Yeah, I
Go.
definitely agree with that. I think like you're trained to do that. You're trained to make them decisions, and you're trained to do them actions. So I think when it comes to it, you kind of just your body takes over, and you just
Yeah.
make them. It kind of just happens.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's something that. So you spoke about changing your running technique. That's something I've been working on changing as well, in this off season. And speaking to my coach about it, and he was like, I was like, how is doing this, that, and the other going to change my sprint? And literally within 3 weeks or so, my sprint changed. And I was
Mm,
like, and he was like, "Oh, did you do that without thinking?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, that's it." And it's like what you just said. When you train to do certain things or have certain cues and make certain decisions, when it comes to competing on game day or match day, it's just natural. You just do it. And
mm,
when you don't do those things, you might end up struggling, or I think a coach of mine years ago when I was a kid said that, oftentimes if you're nervous, you're unprepared. And that kind of that isn't always the case, but in some cases, if you go into a game and you're like super nervous, super anxious, you could feel that you're not ready to take the certain step in that game, or
mm,
be that player. But it might be a case of, if you're confident in your ability, like you say, you're very confident in your ability to make people miss, then you know that, if worst comes to worst, that's something you've got in the bag. If worst comes to worst, you know that you are able to make someone miss, and you have the speed to create completely out of nothing.
mm.
And so before I wrap up, I wanted to ask you a question, because you're pushing on. You're still a young man yourself, but is there any mistakes that you see younger wingers or younger rugby players in general make? And what are those mistakes, and how would you recommend that they remedy them?
To be honest, most like a lot of the young wingers in the Prem are class. Like they're all
Yeah.
really good. So I think I don't know. I mean, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know what to really say to that. I just think I don't. No, I don't know. I don't think I could. I don't know. I don't think what I'd say to that one, to be honest. Off the top, like without any in mind.
what about
Um,
for players that are like, let's say, sort of youth age, like 16? Are there any mistakes that maybe you made at that kind of age that you wouldn't want anyone else to make?
I'll just say, keep like massive thing is enjoyment. Like I almost stopped
Mm.
playing rugby when I was 16, just because I didn't really enjoy it that much.
Hmm.
Um, and rugby in sport isn't for everyone. So
Absolutely.
if you're not enjoying it, you kind of need to have a think, right? Well, why is it I'm not enjoying it? And it turned out that for me, I was at the wrong club. I was at a club that I didn't really want to be at anymore. Like all my friends played somewhere else.
Mm.
And I made the decision to move club, and then I absolutely loved it, and I just kind of thrived. I went on to play for the first team there,
Hmm.
um, and really enjoyed it, and still keep in touch with like the groundsman from that club. So like in my off
Brilliant.
season, he gives me access to like the gym there and the pitch and like all the guys there. I still speak to loads of them. So just I would say for like younger guys, if you're like having one of them periods where you're maybe not as enjoying it as much, like have a think about like what is it that you're not enjoying? Is it you could be playing the wrong position. You might it could be anything, but just maybe
Yeah,
have a think about it. And that's the biggest thing because if you don't enjoy it, you'll end up hating it, and
that's
that's not
brilliant.
ideal.
No, 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 obviously not. That's brilliant. Though. I think that's really sound advice. We play these sports, but before you even get a chance to compete a pro level, you have to play amateur level, and you're not going to get to pro level if you don't really enjoy it because you're not going to
Mm.
want to do it. But no, Adam, honestly, mate, that I've really enjoyed that discussion. Um,
No, I've really enjoyed it. It's been great chatting to you.
no, honestly, mate. One thing that I want to take from what you spoke about, was obviously the mindset of just doing what you do and trusting your training, but also I really like that breathing thing. I never really thought about that because I haven't been in too many situations, thankfully, where I've been getting absolutely battered in my team sport. But you never know with sport anyway. So I think anytime that I find myself in any sort of situation where I'm stressed out and I need to just take just short breath and just breathe and just think about how I'm gonna go attack the next phase of the game, whatever. I think I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna put it into my training. So yeah, I really appreciate that, man.
No, I mean it won't work for everyone, but it's really good because like the guy who does it for us, he's like a really experienced Samoan international, a guy that everyone who's played with and played against will respect. So
Absolutely.
he's there kind of leading it, like like shit's hitting the fan, but it's not going to kill us, and we'll get past it. So it works really well, and I love it. It's great. We do it in training as well. If we're having a session that's not quite going right, he'll bring us in,
Brilliant.
and we'll do it there.
No, that's really good, man. All right, guys. Well, you can find Adam on Instagram. I know you're on Instagram quite a lot. Um, Adam Radders. It's ADAMRADDERZ. Adam, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, perfect, Jason. I really enjoyed it.
All right, mate. See you later.
Catch you later. Bye, mate.